I have to tell you, I'm very grateful today. Ryan Dymond, president and COO of FIKA Company, has joined us on the People's Playbook podcast. And what I love about Ryan is just his forward-thinking leadership style, right? He has been part of the hospitality world. He's part of the retail world. And his culture, forward thinking, drives companies to growth. And he's able to build profit and revenue through driving high culture performing teams. Ryan, welcome to the show today.
Great to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. When we started talking and you just shared some of your leadership principles and the way you deal with people, I absolutely wanted to get you on the show because people have to hear that stuff. And I believe strongly in my being that the world needs better leaders. Unfortunately, I think there's some really good leaders. I think there's some great leaders, but I think there's a lot of bad leaders along the way, right? So getting yourself on the podcast today is a privilege for me because I consider you, and I know people that report into you, Ryan, which is also a strong validation that you think the same way.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's just such a great privilege that I have to lead the team that I am leading today. So it means a lot for me to hear you say that, and more importantly, I should say that they might be saying that, and conveying that to you as well.
Yeah, awesome. Ryan, I got to ask you, so you've led teams in two different genres, right? So hospitality, right? You were there for a while and then you moved over to cannabis retail. And if you look at those two, I know there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. In your opinion, what are the biggest cultural differences between those two worlds and how did you carry over your leadership traits from one sector to another?
Yeah, I think I was in the hospitality space for over 25 years, and it's really cut where I cut my teeth, right? And I think that I had a wonderful opportunity to work with some tremendously talented individuals, those that inspired me, great mentors. I think in hospitality, you can naturally lean into the energy that is already within the four walls, right? There's a lot of guests in the building at the same time. There's a lot of associates in the space at the same time. In the cannabis space, it's a little bit sleepy, right? You might go into a store today that has a single operator. They're waiting for the transactions, and it's hard to foster that culture just through energy. So how do we then there create that within that four-wall experience? And for me, we really led into the background of hospitality, meaning we're really going to try to create meaningful connections, create community through cannabis. And it's about lending a hand before asking for one. And we really truly try to make a consistent emphasis on a transformational experience versus transactional. I found in retail, it was much more transactional. Let's focus on the sale, the average basket, the UPTs, not as much on the genuine emotional connection that you were looking to create with the guests, which
Mhm.
is really, what we've created at Fika. We're leading with hospitality at every time. So, I've sort of led into my background and again, thankfully that, like-minded individuals or not, but they're all buying into this sort of idea of we are a hospitality-led retail cannabis retailer.
Yeah, so almost treating it more of an experience than just a, hey, I'm coming in to get my stuff and the product that I want, not transactional, more of a, hey, we want you to really enjoy yourself from when you walk in this door to the education we can give you. And then from there, when you leave, wow, that was quite an experience. Not just, I didn't just go into a store and give them my credit card and go from there.
100%. Like, we do believe, and I do believe that, it's much more meaningful to create a long-lasting connection with a guest than it is to lead with price or a discount strategy or whatever that might be, right? So, I think the long-term benefits are there. Naturally, it takes more time, but you have to earn trust and credibility, which
Sure.
is what we're doing through every experience. And if that means, and people think I'm crazy when I say it, but if that means we're trading a transaction today, and that might be because we're genuinely concerned with leading with hospitality and doing right for that guest. And that means, you know what? Down the street, you might find this SKU or this item at a cheaper price. I think we're automatically building trust and rapport right then and there in that moment because we're being our authentic selves and we're
Yeah.
trying to guide you in a space that is very much in its infancy. And a lot of ways, we're very much leading with education too, because people are coming in very unfamiliar and wanting to go on that guided educational experience too. So by being authentic and by being real, and showing them that we're willing to lose this transaction because we want to earn credibility, I think we're earning trust over time, which becomes much more meaningful. And I think that's where loyalty plays in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually will have many chats with C-suite like yourself, and I'll say, The two things that actually drive company culture are trust and communication. And it's funny, you just answered that question and you said trust about 3 or 4 times, which was really, really nice to hear. Because if I don't trust you, I probably won't communicate a lot with you. And if I don't communicate with you, it's probably because there's a trust issue, right? So when you build those two pillars and they're strong, then that resonates. And thankfully, that's contagious in an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And we're
Yeah.
continuously re-emphasizing the importance of it. We've introduced different programs, if you will, more movements, but it's built on the emphasis of trust. And it's really how we're getting through conflict in leadership as well. Because once we have those foundational pieces of trust, I believe that if there's trust at the core, you can have more difficult conversations. And you know that you're going to get through it because there's no judgment being made. It's collaborative. It's all for the better good of the business. But it's a foundational piece in my opinion.
Have you heard of trust deposits and trust withdrawals, Ryan?
I've definitely heard of the deposits and withdrawal sort of theory, and we use it all the time. I haven't used it with trust ahead of either or.
Yeah, yeah, I love it when we talk about trust withdrawals and deposits. I tell my team, I say, listen, let's make sure that we deposit more trust into our trust accounts as opposed to
Yeah.
withdrawing. And sure, there's going to be some withdrawals a couple times, right? That maybe I broke your trust, maybe it wasn't intentional, but I did something that took some trust away. But let's just make sure the balance of that trust account, we have a balance first and foremost, right? So we can actually go through.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
You went like your career has been so fast. And if I look at, your kind of trajectory and whatnot, you went from a director of operations and then right to the president and COO of FIKA, which is remarkable. How did you how did you shift your mind to, lead more on an executive level rather than the operational level?
Yeah, it certainly did happen fast, and there was times through it where you naturally question your own ability, right? Can you take on what this scope might be? Thankfully, I've had a CEO who didn't trust, he saw the body of work and he put me in a position where he thought I could succeed. And I'm working towards that every day. By no means am I sitting in the seat today with any sort of ego, if that makes sense. So much humility, so much gratitude. I think one thing that I did lean on was the transformational skills that I had from a director's role into my broader scope role now. And ultimately, it comes down to the cross-functional alignment that my role now requires, right? So
Mhm.
the people that I'm now supporting multiple divisions within this business, executing against the strategy and where we're trying to take this business. So I'm sort of creating if you think about it almost, I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we spend many times just connecting the dots on those picture sort of those pictures that you would connect the dots and the picture becomes clearer after you connect those
Yeah,
dots.
yeah,
So in my world, I sort of use the analogy of I'm creating the dots for my business leaders. They're connecting them to bring better clarity to the purpose. So I'm helping with the identifying what the overall view should be, what our direction is, and the strategic initiatives, but they're the ones that I'm empowering through trust, and they're just they're great leaders, highly competent. I'm learning from them every day too. So I think it starts with the cross functional support, supporting them, painting a picture, and really collaborating together. But again, built on the foundation of trust. I'm trusting them to execute to their role
sure.
as they are me.
Sure. I love that analogy. I'm going to actually steal that from you. That's a great analogy with the picture. That's fantastic. Um, when I listen to what you said about humility, one of the sayings I loved, and I forget who I heard it from, Ryan, but it was people get scared to be like they don't like to lean into humility because they feel like they're missing something, or it shows that they didn't know something or whatnot. You actually leaned into it, and the real definition of humility, I wish I could remember who said it, but they said is just saying, hey, I don't know it all and I need to learn more. And it just frees you up to be able to be humble and be able to say, you know what, I don't know that answer. And I tell leaders all the time, it's so authentic when you say, actually, I don't know that. Right.
Yeah,
But I can find out for you. Right. I can find out. I just don't know it right
right.
now.
Yeah,
Right.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's everything. And, in every conversation we've ever had, specifically when it comes to acquiring new business, right? Because people want to know, what is the leadership of this business? What does it look like? What is your guiding principles from a leadership perspective? And what is your outlook? And, I often lead with, from a hierarchy perspective, it's flattened. There isn't one. right? We're in this together,
Yeah.
and that's how we're going to get through it. And I think it's not just words or jargon, it's the absolute truth. I just don't believe in it. Yeah, certainly there's times in a place where you need to, certain titles, they do earn, some respect, credibility, trust, or whatever it might be, and you need that. But for the most part, 99% of the day, I bet you I can count on one hand in the now, what, 4 years, 3.5 years I've been in this role, how many times I've even shared my position. I bet you in one hand, because I don't ever lead with it. I don't ever speak with it. And in many ways, it actually, I
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable even saying it, because sometimes I'm like, what gave me this right and this
Yeah.
privilege to even deserve such a title? And it's just a title. To be honest, it has no value. It's the people that have the value. And I believe in that. And I tell that to all my leaders as well. You might be chasing career progression and you might be looking for that next title, but you know how you're going to get there? Sure, we'll define a progression plan and all of that, but your people are naturally what's going to elevate you. And that's how I've got to where I'm at today. Because at every opportunity, when the decision came, my people put me in a position to succeed because they couldn't avoid it. I don't mean my people, I mean the people that were making the decisions to
Sure.
elevate an individual in that role.
Yeah.
Because if your team's advocating for you and you're just the right leader because you've always done right by them or tried to do right by them, you can't contest it and you can't ignore it. And that's how we, my opinion, that's how we get to, progress our careers.
I love your thought process on that. I actually had a leader that I worked with for years. He was the president of the company at the time. And when we went out together to visit clients and whatnot, he never said, "Hey, how are you? I'm so and so, I'm the president." He always said, when he introduced himself, he'd say, "Hey, how are you? I'm Peter. I work with Jason." And just such a different approach to, and they didn't sometimes know they were talking to the president of a very big company, but at the time they were just like, "Oh, nice to meet you, Peter." And they had no clue when we left. They'd say, "Oh, what does he do with you?" And I'd say, "He's the president of the company." And they'd be like,
Yeah,
"Really?" Right? And it's such a just a
I love that.
refreshing thought on leadership. He just said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Peter. I work with Jason." Right? And
Yeah, and
no hierarchy and whatnot. Guess what? At the end of the day, he's the president. He knows it. We know it. But he was
sure.
just like, "Okay, I work with Jason."
And don't you find, Jason, that if I'm going into a conversation and I'm leading with title versus leading with a support retail,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to get the real, true, authentic individual on the other side of that conversation that's likely going to share with me things that they may not share with someone that has a title associated with it. I want to know what's happening within your business,
Yeah.
not from a president's role. I want to know from a more granular,
Yep.
the person that's in the surf every day. Tell
Yep.
me your pain points or points of friction and what's real. And that's
Yep.
what I need to get to, the real conversations.
Yeah, take the title away. I love that. Let's talk about cannabis for a second. So, retail moves fast, but cannabis moves really fast, like lightning speed. What
Yeah.
leadership habits have helped you keep like grounded along that rapid growth and just constant change? When we talk, you guys are, there's companies that are merging, there's companies that are acquiring, there's new products and whatnot. It moves so fast, and what you see today is completely different. Like, what you see Monday is completely different than Thursday. That's how much it moves,
Yeah.
right? So how do you keep yourself grounded in that and just make sure your leadership habits don't kind of switch?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the first word that comes to mind is you have to be agile, right? To your point, day to day circumstances change all the time. Highly regulated space, of course, a space that is very much in its infancy, volatile, for years, and we're still working our way through it and normalizing and doing all of that. So I think you got to be agile. I think you also kind of goes back to that humility space where it's like, don't forget the path that got you here, because in my world, I live every day by, I'm only one bad move from being back there in a sense. And I don't mean that with, that as a negative, but more so as a motivation. I remember day one in this cannabis space. I guess I shouldn't say day one. Day one, I started with a banner that was Friendly Stranger, but in a director's role. But day one, as I exited that and we started initiated a startup business, which was Pops Cannabis. I remember training with the team on a lawn in Sturgeon Falls, Ontario, which Sturgeon Falls, you're like, where is that, right? Small
Yeah.
community of next to no one, a couple thousand people, and we're doing training outside on the lawn. And those moments of reflection happen for me all the time because you're never that far removed from it. And I think if you don't allow yourself to get that far removed from it, you're always going to keep everything in balance and centered. And I think we're doing that. And as quickly as we grow, 237 locations today, but don't forget the roots, right? And
Yeah.
I just think it's always important to celebrate the wins along the way. There are milestones, yes, and we should celebrate pause in the moment, but you move on quickly because we haven't won anything yet, right? And our greater goals are still miles away, and we're going to get there because we're fearless and competitive, and we just want to win and we want to compete hard, but we're agile and we make sure that we adjust to the day to day while always focusing on the bigger picture. We know where the
Yep.
North Star is. We're going to get there. But that path is no longer A to B, and it never will be in this space. So it may be unconventional how we do it, but we're going to get there, specifically if we maintain an agility that we have to demonstrate.
Yeah, you're very competitive and persistent, which I love about your style. You said a couple things there about rapid growth and things move fast. What are the biggest mistakes that you've seen leaders make when growing multi-location teams? And you've done it in both hospitality and retail. So you've seen that. So and how did you avoid it when you went to Fika?
I think I really leaned on my journey. To your point, I've been on both sides of it. I've been on a company that was acquired, and I've been on the company that is acquiring businesses. So I think the first thing you got to lead with is empathy.
Yeah.
Understand that. And I share that story when we acquire a business. I said, hey, back in the day when we were acquired, I know all of the feelings that you might be going through right now. And I'm here to sort of calm those down for you and let you know that we're here. We bought a good business. We're not here to disrupt your business. So
Yeah.
everything that I sort of teach my team, or sorry, ask of my team, is that we're going to go on a learning journey, and we're going to learn everything about this business without changing a single thing, because who are we to come in and change with this change management approach that we think we can do things better? And
Yep.
that's the exact narrative that I experience. Rather than learning and trying to understand the business that we had created, it was more so of a top down approach. We know best. This is how you're going to adopt our practices, which you can imagine how culturally that impacted the business. It was toxic. So we do everything to avoid that. Well, certain change is imminent. We know that, but it's going to be a journey. We're going to seek to understand, and we're going to do it at a pace that makes sense for the business and allow them to come to terms with it versus us forcing that on them.
Yeah. It's I spoke to this one CEO one time, and he was in a fast growing sector as well. And he said, when you merge with a company or you're going in to make change, there's two ways to take. He said there's two ways to take a picture off the wall. You can take a big crane, rent the crane, put a wrecking ball on it, get that crane, get in the momentum, and then smash the wall, and the picture will fall down. He said, or you can just kind of gently walk up and take the picture off the wall. And he
Yeah,
said that, and that's what you just described. Hey, you guys have done some great things along the way. That's why we're merging with you or acquiring you, because you guys have done a great job. So we're going to look
exactly.
at your systems. We're probably going to adopt some of them on our side as well. And then we're going to
Yeah,
tell you kind of what works on our side as well to just make it an even better, high cultured, results driven company along the way.
for sure. And listen, and I think that the risk is just too vast if we go in there and make changes. Like to your point and to my point earlier, we do buy great business, right? So if we made a change that somehow jeopardized culture or guest experience or people experience, then shame on us, because now we have to own what may be the negative impact to that business that we created because of what? Because we had an ego that we had to change things to align with how we operate a business.
Yeah.
No chance is that happening, right? In
Yeah.
fact, in the business that we have today, by no means have we even standardized practices, because we're so decentralized in with our mindset and how we're operating our business, that naturally we're bringing certain processes to a standardization. We have to do that to allow us to grow and scale and tuck in acquisitions where we need to. So there is some back of house administrative sort of alignment, nothing that would be guest facing, because we don't want to dilute those brands. They have meaning, and they have, there's emotional connections and all of these things that if we were to come in and change everything from a guest experience, people experience, administrative, back house, whatever it might be, then we may as well not have 17 brands. We may as well have one,
Yeah.
because they're no longer unique. So,
Yeah.
to get to that best practices of retail alignment, goes to my point earlier, where we're listening and learning, we're bringing in leaders from all of those banners to help us make these decisions as to what is the best practice for, XYZ. And we're going to come out of that room through collaboration with alignment that allows everyone to feel like they were a part of it because they were, and they're all guiding these decisions as they should be because they've earned that right.
Yeah. Wow. When you're growing as fast as you are, let's be transparent. You have a lot of young leaders that come into your organization, right? At the retail level, right? How do you, like you just said, that really resonated with me on your leadership traits and what you concentrated on there. But how do you, how do you teach a young person that might be, having a store, a supervision manager, whatever they are at that store? How do you teach them, listen, I don't want you to just be a manager, but I want you to be a leader at a young age? Because there is an entry level job in some of these stores, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's, in some ways it's difficult because I think that, you have certain insecurities at a when you're less experienced than you may when
Sure.
you have more experience, right? And you feel
Yeah.
like you always have to have the answers, and and that's not necessarily the case. But I think because the insecurity of, this is my job security. If I don't have the answers, and if I hire someone that might be more talented than me, then there goes that job security, which couldn't be further from the truth, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, we have the conversations about what today's team members want, which is not a boss. They want a coach, and they want someone that is a servant leader versus a dictator. To me, there's nothing less attractive than a dictator who wants to
Oh,
come in and tell you how to do everything and micromanage your business.
yeah.
I'm like, it just turns me off, right? So for us, I mean, it goes back to our sort of, our approach of being decentralized, but also empowerment is a word that we throw around every day because we want to empower our leaders at all levels of the business to make decisions, run it like they own it. Fail, but fail forward. It's okay. We're there to
Yeah.
pick you up and we'll help you through it. So we put a lot of time and effort into, and there's still so much runway ahead of us, Jason, but what is the development plan for our youngest leaders? What is an accelerated leadership plan for those on the cusp of leveling up to that, that general manager, shop manager, multi-unit, whatever it might be? And
Yeah.
that's it's a greatest privilege and a great responsibility, but it also goes beyond our four walls in our business too, where I feel it's our responsibility to level up one's, you know, professional experience and or behavioral traits, leadership competencies, whatever it might be. If that means that they're better suited for another role beyond our organization, but we had something to do with that, then that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to really lean into as well. So, I think that we've gone on a learning journey. We're really leaning with education, and there's a large and long runway ahead of us to really get more dangerous in that area. But it is a commitment that, all of our teams are very hyper focused on going into the future. Listen, I've had great experiences in the past. I'll have to shout out Surcorp as one of the best and really leaning into the training and development of their people.
Yep.
And I've taken so much away from that, and I've seen the magic in that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's inspiring when you say that stuff, and when you just go about like talking about best great leaders and terrible leaders. We all remember a terrible manager we had. We also remember the best manager we had, right? And I often say to the younger generation, when you find that great leader or that manager or whoever was that person in your life that actually helped you get some tools in your tool belt that you're going to use in the future, text them, phone them, email them, and let them know they did a great job. Because to my point earlier, we need better leaders in this world. And I find that a lot of leaders, they're always told what they should have done or what they didn't do. It's nice to say, you know what, you actually made a difference in that young person's life. And
Yeah,
they actually became and did great things along the way because of your leadership and how you started them off. It's a privilege to be a leader. It's a privilege to be a leader,
privilege.
right?
I completely agree with you, and I don't do enough of that either. I'm not reaching out to my mentors as much as I should be either, and we can all learn from that message. So thank you for that because I should do a better job there too. But to your point, it is our privilege. And if you want your legacy as a leader to be just that, where you created to me, we're in the business of creating opportunity, right?
Yep.
And that opportunity for that day one employee to find a path for progression through our organization or other to level up, whatever that might be, it's a tremendous honor.
Yeah. If you could look back, Ryan, because you're very self-aware, if you could look back and say, hey, if I could tell my young 20-year-old self, something about leadership today that just, like hold on or do, if you could give that young 20 some odd year old Ryan Dymond a piece of advice from what you've learned today, what would you tell that young Ryan?
Um, it's a great question. I think that some of the things that I mentioned earlier about the insecurities, right? You're just kind of finding your way forward, and I think you naturally have those. So I think being confident without an ego, is important. But I always sort of bring it back to, if you always lead with people and do right by your people, they will always do right by you. And I've
Yeah.
got an example, and I've got many examples of that. And I've got so much more out of people that I've had the privilege of leading than I probably ever deserved. And I often find myself wondering why. What did I do that deserved this individual to react in the way that they did and really have my back or whatever it might be? I go back to, and I've shared this story in the past where, I had a restaurant in Burlington, and I knew it was being sold, and I wanted to make sure I provided adequate time for my team members to go find and secure other employment opportunities before we actually closed the door. I didn't want them to have a gap, and all of a sudden, like many places do, they just close, show up to work one day, you're
Yeah.
locked out. What's next? So, I made the decision to, and I knew the risk, to share with them that, hey, listen, the business is being sold. We're exiting and we're going to close on this date. And with that, obviously, I was up against it, having a real hard time making payroll. It was a real challenging time in my life. And it was beautiful in a sense where, I started to work every position within the restaurant, right? Because I was depleted in staff because of the reasons I had already shared with you.
Yeah.
And what happened next was unbelievable, where people started to show up with no expectation of being paid. They just wanted to come in and help. And they just
Oh,
wanted to come and get me through my shift in my hardest time. And it hit hard. It hit my heart so
for
deeply.
sure.
It was so amazing to see just the beauty of human kindness and being
Yeah.
good to people, and how much it's that pay it forward, right? And it was magical. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll pass that forward because I love that famous saying, you give what you get and you get what you give, right? And when we have times of trouble or times of chaos, it's amazing sometimes when somebody just does something really special for you or just says something to you or lends a hand where you just think, wow, I will never forget that. And I'm sure that was quite a long time ago, and you're talking about it today.
It'll make a everlasting impact on me, and it impacts every decision I make even today. And thankfully, I always will lead with people first, right? That's just my DNA and my core, and I truly do believe in that. What what I have where, some others may not have, is this great privilege of being in a role that allows me to make decisions that could be truly impactful for an individual because it's the right thing to do for that individual. And yeah, we don't miss the opportunity to do right
Yeah.
by our people. Now, I'm not suggesting, because we have not got this perfect, and there's many areas in our business where we have to do much better, and we're working towards that. In many ways, with our growth, we keep adding the floors to our business, but the stability of the foundation needs to be corrected. So I admit that it's not perfect, but at the core of how we operate this business, the culture, the people first, that is non-negotiable. And I hope that everybody feels that. And where they don't, we have to do better.
Yeah, and I wish you, well, you will see this, but you should see the passion on your face when you say that, when you say non-negotiable. And that's one of your operating principles that you say, "Hey, I'm not swaying on that." Right? That is, we're going down this path, and sure there's some things you can negotiate with me and we can talk about, but not on culture and leadership. Ryan, you've been generous with your time today. I do have one question for you just to get you off to a better day because I know you're a thinker. And that question would be this: if you could give two pieces of advice to young leaders today to help them, enjoy their path of leadership and managing people and growing within their organization and just help them do it either quicker or enjoy the ride a little longer, what are the two pieces of advice you'd give to a young person?
I think you got to remain true to yourself, be your authentic self, right? Never waver, be authentic. And regardless of who's watching, you know, make the decision that is who you are, based off principle, based off your DNA. So being authentic is to me very important. You don't want to get caught in a lie down the road, right? So don't put up a mask. And I still very much believe in work ethic is always going to, if you're the hardest worker in the room, it's going to open up doors regardless of education, experience. Naturally you need to have it, right? But if you're working, I remember a experience in my younger life where I was an assistant general manager in a restaurant. And at that time I thought, well, why is my general manager not taking time to really train and develop me? And then the aha moment was, well, what if I took my own initiative to learn on
Yeah.
my own? And I went to him and asked him the questions based off, what I needed help with to help bridge the gap. And
Yeah.
that's what we need to do, because as you get into leadership roles, sure, your responsibility is to grow and develop, but you often are stretched and you often don't have time to spend
Yeah.
doing that, but you'll always make time for that individual that's coming to you with the questions. So I would
Yeah.
encourage people to be curious and to really work as hard as anyone in the room. Ask questions, ask many questions, right?
Yeah.
Don't take no for an answer. No is a pursuit to no really means not yet, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess those are two things that I always sort of lean into and I would try to pass along.
Oh man, Ryan, those are great pieces of advice. And it's funny how similar they are to the presidents and CEOs I interview. One person said it like this, just exactly like you just said. He said it's amazing what happens when a young person says yes. And do you want to
Right.
try this? Yes. Do you want to be in this on the health and safety committee? Yes. Do you want
Yeah.
to, be part of that meeting? Yes. And when you say yes, all of a sudden eyes are on you and you get in front of people that you may know and that may hopefully make a difference in your path along the way. And then you also said being authentic. And, one of the sayings that I love about authenticity and integrity is doing the right things when nobody's watching. Right?
Exactly.
That is
Yes.
truly that's integrity and authenticity at its core. So, Ryan, listen, I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I know you're a busy man. I really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on leadership, culture. You're building something pretty fantastic. And when I say you, I know it's you and the team. I actually know
Yeah.
you always talk about the team's building it. So I will lead with that just as you do. But thank you for being a great leader. Please keep it up and please pass it on because leadership's contagious and we need great leaders in this world. So I thank you for your time today, Ryan.
Oh, I appreciate you, Jason. Thanks for having me.
No problem, my friend. If you love that session and that conversation as much as I did, would love to have you join our People Playbook community in the link below.